Om. Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram. Okay, so we are on, if you want to see, page 208 of your book. It's section 7. I'm just gonna review that section and then I'll go ahead and chant what we're gonna do today. So basically, there were 2 questions asked. And the question was, when an ignorant person, if the ignorant person does not realize the truth, where does that person go? And the wise person, if the wise person realizes the truth, where does the wise person go? Do they attain Brahman or not? Because Brahman is supposed to be impartial. Brahman has no favorites. We also see this in the Bhagavad Gita. Samoham sarvabhuteshu means samaha aham. I am the same to all. So where do people go? However, these 2 questions came and they were not answered. So we have to infer that there's another question being posed. And the inferred question is, does Brahman exist or not? And the reason we're inferring that question is because the section that follows after all details proofs of Brahman's existence. Although Brahman cannot be recognized or realized by logic, these proofs are there to help us turn inwards, to help us think that yes, there actually is something there. The realization has to come from ourselves, by ourselves. So logic is just a tool here. Because Adi Shankaracharya ji is very, very clear in Brahma Sutras that logic cannot be used to realize Brahman, because Brahman is beyond the ken of the intellect. But these proofs are there to make our intellect silent and turn within. That is the reason for logic. So what are the proofs? There are 7 of them and we saw 5. I'll just review the 5. So the first one we saw was jagat kāraṇatvāt. That Brahman is there because there has to be a kāraṇa or a cause for the world. If we look at anything that is made, that is created, that we perceive, that we experience, comes from something. It doesn't come from nothing. You can't say that, a tree came from nothing or a plant came from nothing. So there has to be a source where everything has come. And like in the world, we might not see the source. When we look at the tree, we might not see the seed. But seeing the tree, we know that there is a source, there's a seed there. So we might not see Brahman, but we know there's a source. That source cannot be you or me, because none of us can create such beauty, such wonder in nature. We cannot do that. So there is an all-powerful source, and behind that all-powerful creative source is consciousness, sentiency, awareness, because this is required to create anything. Consciousness is required to create. The second reason we saw is guhāyām upalabhyate, meaning that it says in the verses that we covered, upon creating, tat srishtva tadeva nupravishat. Brahman, upon creating, entered. So what does it mean that Brahman entered? How can Brahman enter into us, into creation, when Brahman is already there? Brahman is all-pervading. And Brahman is partless. So there's only Brahman. It's not like there's something else for him to actually enter. So what is this entry? This entry is Brahman is available as I, as my innermost self, as the witness of thoughts. When we say Brahman has entered, God has entered, don't think that like a big, mighty, majestic figure entered into you. No, that consciousness is available within you. That consciousness is Atman, the witness consciousness. So therefore, because I have direct experience that I am a witness of my thoughts, that means Brahman is, consciousness is. The third reason is vibhaktvena avabhasat, that when we see this world, there's so many dualities or differences. There's something that is inert, and there's something that's sentient. There's something that's unmoving, there's something that's moving. There's something that's gross, there's something that's subtle. There's something defined, something undefined. So when we look at these dualities, which are quite opposite to each other, what could be the cause of both? Many people can sort of postulate that there's a cause for sentiency and there's a cause for insentiency. But what is the cause of both? There's a cause for the unmoving, and then there's a cause for the moving. But what is the cause of both? What is there in both unmoving, moving, insentient, sentient? What is there in both gross and subtle, and even unmanifest? What is there? We cannot say it's time, because time is not there in deep sleep. We cannot say it's space. Space is also not there in deep sleep. Can we say it's atoms? Can we say atoms are in our thoughts? We don't know. That is yet to be really, really determined. So what is there that is able to appear everywhere, that is able to appear manifold, is able to appear in duality? That is only Brahman. That ability to express this way is only Brahman. It cannot be anything else. Then the fourth proof is Sukrita Prasiddhehe, meaning Brahman is self-made, well-made. When we look at this creation, there's a niyama, there's an order. Everything runs in a specific order. And whenever there is order, we know that there's a sentient entity behind it. And when there's a sentient entity, that can only be possible through consciousness. So the fact that the earth is rotating and the earth revolves and the planets revolve around the sun, the fact that the law of gravity is whatever you put up, it will come down. The fact that there are so many laws, not just laws by a constitution, which are man-made, but divine universal laws that make everything function, show that there's an order. And order is only possible if there's sentiency. The inner things cannot order themselves around. They cannot move themselves and fix themselves. They always need something sentient to move them. Then we saw the fifth proof, rasatvat prasiddhehe, that Brahman is known as rasa. This is very beautiful. Raso vai saha. Rasa literally means essence or juice, meaning that we experience the bliss of Brahman. So rasa is essence, juice, but it's really, really bliss. The fact that we are experiencing bliss in life shows there is Brahman. Because when we clearly analyze, the bliss is not coming from the object, because otherwise everybody would enjoy the same object, but what might be very enjoyable to you might not be to me. The bliss is not coming from the person. The person you might want to be with, I might not want to be with. Not giving me joy. So the bliss is not coming from the object. It's not coming from the person. It's not even coming from the experience. Something that you enjoy experiencing, I might not enjoy it. It is coming when the mind becomes quiet. And when the mind is quiet, that bliss is able to manifest. So it's actually coming, as we've examined, on the renunciation of all of this. That's where the bliss is coming from. And that's why in deep sleep, there's no object, no experience, no person, but yet we are incredibly happy. So this is a direct proof, rasa, that bliss is within. It's a very, very beautiful way to describe Brahman, because often when we eat a fruit, we don't see the juice, we see the fruit. But inside it is the juice, and that's what we all crave for. When we eat food, we don't see the taste, but that's what we all crave for. In the same way, when we're enjoying, as though enjoying or experiencing objects outside, what we're actually drawn to is Brahman. We're drawn to Brahman. We're drawn to the fact that when we become one with the object of our desire, the mind ceases and the self manifests. When we become one with the object of our desire, the mind ceases. The bliss manifests, but we attribute it to the object and never to the subject. So this, when we think about it clearly, raso vai saha. Brahman is rasa. Brahman is rasa. It's all coming from within. Now, the next one, I'll go ahead now and read this verse, because the next one, the sixth proof, something I have not read yet. So I will go ahead and read this. So let me see where we are. I want you to now turn to page 211. So it is, if you want to see it, section 7.2 in your book. I'll read a little bit more than this, but then I'll explain from where we need to go forward. Asadva idamagra asit tato vai sadajayata tad atmanaggasvayam akuruta tasma tat sukritam uchata iti yadvai tat sukritam raso vai saha Rasagahyevayam labdvanandi bhavati ko hyevanyat kaf pranyat yadesha akasha anando nasyat esha yevanandayati yada hyevaisha etasminnadrishyena nirukte anilayane abhayam pratishtam vindate ataso bhayam gato bhavati yada ह्येवेष एतस्मिन् उदरमन्तरं कुरुते अततस्य भयं भवति तत्त्वेव भयं विदुषो अमन्वानस्य तदप्येष श्लोको भवति. So here, now in this verse we saw tatvai yadvai tat sukritam. That Brahman is self-made. Sukritam, self-made, is Sukritam also means, as I said, well-made. Meaning, by the fact that creation is so well-made, we understand there's a sentiency behind it. Raso vai saha. Brahman is joy. Brahman is rasa. Definitely joy. Rasagam kyevayam labdvanandi bhavati. So this rasa, this joy, esha ayam labdva, having obtained this joy, anandi bhavati, one becomes blessed. So one only experiences joy when that mind is quiet and that ananda is able to manifest. See, sat means existence. For existence to manifest, what is required is life. What is required is pranas. What is required is a mind. Chit is consciousness. For consciousness to manifest, what is required is the mind intellect equipment. That's why in a stone, consciousness is there, but it's not manifest because it doesn't have a mind intellect equipment. In plants, it's a little bit more manifest. In animals, a little bit more. And in humans, it is very much so manifest. Ananda is bliss or infinity. For Ananda to manifest, it requires not only a mind, but a quiet mind. So this is what it is saying, that ayam labdva anandi bhavati. Only one who has gained this bliss, who has understood this, is definitely blessed. Now, the sixth reason is karya karana sanghata. Kriya darshanat. Karya karana sanghata kriya darshanat. Meaning, we know Brahman is because we see life in our body, mind, intellect assemblage. We see kriya, we see movement. We see movement in this sanghata, this assemblage of what? Karya karana, of the instruments, of all our instruments, our mind, our intellect, our sense organs. We see life there. Here it says, kaha anyat, kaha pranyat. Who else can breathe out or breathe in? Yat eshaha akashaha anandaha nasyat. If this ananda, if this joy, akasha, which is in the cavity of the heart, nasyat, if this joy wasn't there, if this ananda wasn't there, who could breathe in and breathe out? Eshaha hi eva anandayati. This one surely brings us joy. So this which was self-made, that is taste, joy. Having obtained this taste, man becomes blessed. For who can breathe out or breathe in if this joy were not there in the cavity of the heart? Brahman itself brings us joy. when we studied Upanishad. Very beautifully, the student asked, Ke neshitam patati preshitam manaha. What is it that makes the mind function? Kena pranav prathama praiti yuktaha. What is it that makes the breath breathe? Ke neshitam vacham imam vadanti. What is that makes the speech speak? Chakshu shrotram ka udevo yunakti. What is it that makes the eye, the ears, what the eyes see, the ears hear? What is it that makes them function? He asked this question. Because the eyes themselves don't say, I am seeing. Correct? The eyes themselves don't say, I am seeing. The breath itself doesn't say, I am breathing. The lips, the voice, speech doesn't say, I am speaking. So clearly there is something else that makes it function, makes it come alive. We're able to see, hear, smell, taste, touch. How do I have this experience? How do I have this experience? How does it happen? And it is not asking for the scientific proof that the light rays fall on the object, then it hits your eye, and then it goes to your brain. But the student is asking, how does that even happen? How do I recognize that? How do I have the first person experience? How do I say that I can breathe? And the teacher says, it is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of the speech, the breath of the breath. Meaning, it is consciousness that enables all of us to see, hear, smell, taste, think. It is that pure awareness which enables this. Because we can see, there must be something that illumines sight. Because we can hear, something illumines hearing. Because we can breathe, there's something that illumines breath. What is that? That is Brahman. As Brahman. So due to Brahman, we can breathe out, we can breathe in. We can experience the world. And this surely brings us joy. Meaning when we feel life, when we feel alive, when our sense organs work, when our mind works, it brings us joy. But when something stops working, the eyes stop working, the ears stop working, or the tongue cannot taste, we feel dead. Because that sentiency is not able to express. When that sentiency expresses, we feel so much joy. But when that sentiency is curtailed, somebody tells us, don't look, don't hear, don't taste, don't touch. We don't like that. So this provides us with joy because we can feel, think, engage in the world. Then there must be that consciousness which enables us to do so. So this is the sixth proof. One beautiful thought I'll share before we move to the next proof. One great Mahatma had brought up a nice point. Whenever we experience joy, so-called joy, it is coming from consciousness only, because let us say we put a sugar candy in our mouth, a tongue, let's say. So the joy doesn't come from the sugar candy, doesn't come from that. It is not coming from the tongue. It's not coming from the sugar candy, and it's not coming from the tongue. But what happens when the sugar candy touches the tongue and I have an experience? That's when joy, the experience of joy happens. The experience of joy happens not in the object, but in the contact, in the actual experience. So what is this telling us? That even whenever we experience joy in the world, consciousness is behind it. Because any experience is impossible without consciousness. And the joy of the world is only in the experience of it. And experience is only possible because of consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is joy. So very beautifully, it brings us joy. Brings us joy. Okay. Now we'll go to the next one. This is now on page 217. This is 7.3. The next reason, next proof of Brahman's existence is bhaya abhaya hetutvat. It means Brahman is the cause of fear and fearlessness. Brahman is the cause of fear and fearlessness. Yada, it says yada, when he esha, when indeed eshaha, this seeker, eva, thus, when indeed this seeker abhayam pratishtam vindate, gains, vindate means gains, abhayam pratishtam, fearless abidance, gains fearless abidance in what? In this Brahman, which is adrishye, which is not perceptible. The translation here is invisible, means we cannot recognize through the senses or the mind. Anatmye here means Brahman without a body. Anirukte, inexplicable Brahman. Anilayane, unsupported Brahman. So when that being has fearless abidance in this Brahman, in Brahman of this nature, then what happens? Athaha saha abhayam gato bhavati. Then this being becomes fearless because he has fearless abidance in Brahman. But when in ignorance, indeed he eva, thus eshaha, an ignorant being, etasmin, in this Brahman, udaram antaram kurute, means makes a difference, makes the slightest, udaram antaram, makes the slightest distinction. When in ignorance, an ignorant person makes the slightest distinction, ataha tasya bhayam bhavati, then this person becomes fearful. Tattu eva bhayam, and that Brahman, that Brahman, eva bhayam, becomes a sense of fear, a source of fear. For this person in ignorance, Brahman becomes a source of fear. To whom? Vidushaha. Vidushaha usually means somebody who's wise, but here it means somebody who thinks they're wise, but actually not wise. Amanvanasya. And amanvanasya means to one who doesn't think deeply. To this person, Brahman is a source of fear. Tad api eshaha shloko bhavati. About this, there is a verse. So when this seeker attains the fearlessness oneness with Brahman, was invisible, incorporeal, inexplicable, and unsupported, then he becomes free from fear. When, however, he makes even the slightest distinction in Brahman, then there's danger for him. That very same Brahman himself becomes a source of fear for him who makes a difference and who reflects not. To the same effect, there is the following Vaidika verse. So what does this mean? So first let's look at the nature of Brahman. Nature of Brahman is adrishye. Adrishye means not available for perception, not available for mind, because it's not an effect of anything. It's not something that is produced by anything. So it is beyond the realm of the mind and the senses. Then it says anatmye. Earlier, we kept seeing that the Atma, or the inner self of the Annamaya Kosha, is Pranamaya Kosha. The inner self of the Pranamaya Kosha is the Manomaya Kosha. The inner self of the Manomaya Kosha is the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Here, Brahman doesn't have any such form. There's nothing inner to Brahman. Brahman is all there is. So there's nothing inner. It's formless. Because Brahman is formless, inexplicable. We can't explain because the mind and senses cannot grasp it. Anirukte. And Brahman is anilayane. There's nothing that supports Brahman. Everything else needs a support, but Brahman rests on its own glory. Now, Brahman is there because when people are rooted in Brahman, they become fearless. It's a source of fearlessness. And when people are not rooted in Brahman, they become frightful. So, in essence, when we see oneness with all, then there is no fear whatsoever. There's no fear whatsoever. And I'll just illustrate this through a couple of examples. First, we'll start with a very, very basic example. This is what Guruji gives us. Let us say that there's a little girl. She's a young girl. She's about 3 or 4 years old, and she's playing in her house and with her mom. And her dad went to buy some Halloween masks and costumes because they have a party to go to. Yeah? And her dad comes home wanting to play a prank, and he wears, a very, very scary mask. He wears a very scary mask. And he comes home and he knocks on the door, and she opens it because she's wanting to see her dad. She knows her dad is gone. And when she opens the door, she sees her dad in a mask. She cries. Because who is this? She doesn't recognize. He has such a scary mask. And then he picks her up and he holds her and he says, "It's just me." He takes out the mask and he says, "It's just me." And she stops crying completely. She stops crying completely and she says, "Oh, okay, let me try the mask too." So what is this saying? We're only afraid when we see somebody to be other than us. When we see that this person is other than us, this thing is other than us, then that fear just rises in our hearts. In Alexander the Great's time, he came and conquered so many places, and he was in India and he wanted to bring home one of the sadhus. And he looked at this sadhu, this saint, and he said, "Will you come with me to Greece? Yeah, come back with me because we don't have people like you." And the sadhu said, "I don't need to go anywhere. I am everywhere. I'm all pervading." And Alexander, took out his sword and he said, "I will harm you." The sadhu said, "You can't do anything to me. Even if you break this body, I will still exist. I'm absolutely timeless. So you go ahead and do whatever you want to do. I am the light which illumines you. I am the light which illumines this body, and I absolutely am unafraid." So Alexander couldn't understand this. And he dropped his sword. Look, this is not ordinary. That saint was rooted in the fact that he is one with the whole universe, and he is beyond this body, he's beyond this mind, he's beyond this intellect, he's beyond all of that. He's so rooted in it. And that's how they lived. So we also see in the life of, let's say, Narad Rishi, when he was threatened by Ratnakar, this really highway thief, robber, he wasn't afraid. He in fact gave a teaching to Ratnakar, and this Ratnakar became Valmiki Rishi, the one who authored Ramayana. Or when we see the Buddha, when Angulimala came to threaten him, the one who, kills people and destroys, takes away their life. When he came to Buddha, Buddha was unmoved, was not afraid. So we become fearful when we think that there's somebody else out there. There's somebody else other than me who can destroy me. And we become fearful when we identify with this body, mind, and intellect, and not with Brahman. When we identify with Brahman, what is there to fear? So if somebody hurts the body, it's the body. If somebody hurts the mind, if somebody hurts our intellect, hurts our ego, so what? That is not us. But when somebody is established in Brahman, there's absolute fearlessness. One more anecdote I'll share with you, that one time that I heard this beautiful story. It's a true story. There was a secret service agent, and he was in his house, and somebody broke into the property. This man with a gun. And this man said, "You give me all your money and your wealth and everything." And so this secret service agent, he said, okay, he was just kind of baffled. All of a sudden, some guy comes to you with a gun, wanting your money and everything. Then his wife comes out. And his wife says, "Are you okay? There must be something bothering you that you have to do this. We are having dinner right now. Why don't you come in and have dinner with us?" This is what she said. This guy has a gun. He's about to rob their place. She tells him, "Why don't you come inside? Have dinner with us. Sit with us." And the husband was completely shocked. My wife must be crazy. But anyway, she invited him in. He sat. And when he sat there, he just let go of everything. He was going through so much. So life was very, very tough for him. And that's why he decided to do this. And after that, when they all felt one, when they all felt that they were in a space together, he just let everything go. That the husband asked him, "Okay, please leave your gun." He said, "Yeah, I'll leave my gun and I'll go home." The next day, that person came back, that robber, and that husband was there and asked him, you might come for your gun, but I cannot give it back to you. He said, "No, I have not come for that. I've come to thank you. Because what you did for me was unimaginable. You prevented me from doing something wrong, and you actually heard me out." So that is another degree, That was another degree of fearlessness. Now, how many of us could actually do that? But the purpose of this is to show us that when we become one with people, one with the universe, fear vanishes. It's like you're the screen and everything is playing on the movie. Everything is playing on you. So why are you afraid? It's a movie playing on you. You're the screen. But the minute we see a little bit of difference, even a little bit, here it's very beautiful. He says, "Udaram antaram," meaning the slightest difference. Even if we see the slightest difference, we will have fear. We have fear that somebody will do better than us. Somebody will rise higher than us. Somebody will threaten us. Somebody will leave us. Somebody will leave us, meaning we depend on that person so much, we're afraid that they leave us because we see a distinction. Somebody will do better than us. We see a distinction. Where if I am that person, please do well, succeed by all means. We feel that somebody can harm us, hinder us, because we think the other person is a body and I am a body, and therefore you can harm me. No, we're the same. We're pure consciousness. So from the highest level, those who take refuge in Brahman are fearless. And those who do not take refuge in Brahman have fear. Therefore, something has to be there. That's something which makes people fearless. That's something which is there, which makes people fearless. That is called Brahman. That's called Brahman. In the worldly realm, two things bring fearlessness. In the absolute realm, it's abiding in Brahman. In the worldly realm, two things bring fearlessness. The first thing that brings fearlessness in the worldly realm is a life of dharma. When we do our duties, when we fulfill our responsibilities, truthfully, there's no fear. If we are driving within speed limit, we're very comfortable. If we pay our taxes on time, we're very peaceful. If we are law-abiding citizens, we are fine. But the minute we step out of dharma, we will have fear. Fear that somebody will catch us. Fear of guilt. Fear of regret. Fear that we will be left. Fear that we will be in sorrow. All of that comes with adharma. The second thing that brings about fearlessness in the world is that taking refuge in Bhagavan, in God. That brings fearlessness in the worldly sense. Because when we feel like afraid, there's a beautiful acronym given for fear. FEAR, false evidence appears real. It appears real. It's not really there. It appears real. When we take shelter in Bhagavan, who is the one who is most secure, most stable, the one who will always protect us and help us, then that brings a great amount of fearlessness, because we know that we will be taken care of no matter what happens. But when we take shelter, take refuge in the world, then it's a cause for fear. Because people will leave us, people will go. Things will come and go. They won't be there forever, right? So this is from a worldly perspective. Now, let us go to the next part. We'll just see a little bit of this next part. I am now in section 8, verse 1 to 22. And I'm just going to read the first part of this. Brahmananda mimamsa bhishasmadvatah pavate bhishodeti suryah bhishasmadagnischendrascha mrityurdhavati panchama iti saishanandasya mimagam sa bhavati. Okay. Till there we will see. Here, now it says, we saw that the one who is rooted in Brahman is fearless. But now he's going to show in this Upanishad how Brahman is also a source of fear to those who are ignorant. But here, in a different way, Brahman is a source of fear. Bhishasmad vatav pavate. Bhisha means through fear, asmat, through fear of Brahman, vataha pavate, the wind blows. Bhishodeti suryaha. Bhisha, through fear, udeti, rises, suryaha, through fear, the sun rises. Bhishas asmat agnihi cha indraha cha. Out of fear, of that Brahman, fire, and Indra. Indra is the Devata of rains. And Mrityuhu Dhavati Panchama. And death proceeds as the fifth. Through fear of him blows the wind. Through fear of him rises the sun. Through fear of him again fire and moon. And lastly, the fifth, death proceed to their respective duties. So here, fear is in the sense of control. That because, as we saw also when we explored the word sukritam, that because Brahman is there, there's a sentiency behind this whole manifestation or appearance that we see, then Bhishasmad Vatav Pavate, the wind blows. And how do we know the wind blows? Because we're breathing. So the wind blows. Because of sentiency, because there's a sentient being behind the whole creation. Bhisha udeti suryaha. And out of that fear, the sun rises, the sun sets, the planets revolve around the sun. Bhisha asmat agnihi. That fire is there, and fire is always hot. It has a nature of heat. And we feel that there's heat. Our body has to be maintained at a certain heat for it to survive. And there's rains. Indra is the Devata of rains, who makes sure that the right amount of rain comes so that life continues to dwell on this planet. And because of that, Mrityuhu Dhavati. Here, death runs. One commentator said, death runs because death is very busy. Doing so many things. Because there is life and death, because there's a cycle, then there has to be a sentiency behind that. Now, a side note here about death. One interesting thing that I read, that people have fear of death, but actually, nobody has seen death. Meaning, if we ourselves saw death, then if we saw our own death, then we would be alive, right? Because if we're seeing our own death, we would be alive. And if we died, we wouldn't see our own death. So how are we establishing death? We're establishing death because maybe we see other people die. But actually, we don't really see other people die. When the body goes, let us say if we cremate the body, the 5 elements, the space, air, fire, water, earth, they didn't really die. They're just going back to their form. They're just going back to earth. They didn't really die. So you're not really seeing death because elements are going back to elements. And that jiva that's going to another body, you can't really see that jiva. Like nobody's seen the jiva leave the body. And that pure Atman, which is there, whether someone is living or dead, nobody has seen that. So we are afraid of something that we have never seen. This is what he says, right? So out of Brahman, out of fear of Brahman, or out of fear of that reality, everything functions the way it needs to function, including life and death. Now the next section is very, very beautiful. We will get that started next week, but I'll just give you a preview. It's going to go through the whole analysis of happiness, how there are different gradations of happiness, and then it will conclude with the happiest one is, of course, the knower of the self, the one who is free from desires. So next week, we will go through that analysis and we will see just how happy we can be in this world and just how our nature of happiness is actually beyond this world. We don't really need anything. We just are. Okay, so we will conclude here. Today we saw very beautiful verses that Brahman is the reason for all life, for all of our experiencing the world through our senses and the mind. Brahman is the reason for fearlessness. Brahman is also the reason for fear. Okay. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurabhyo Namaha. Harihi